On today's episode, Tina and I are going to share some of the mistakes we made as new writers so that you don't have to.
Hello, and welcome to the Christian Indie Writers Podcast, where we inform, encourage, and support Christian indie writers on their journey to publication. I'm Christina Catane, and I'm currently writing a murder mystery.
And I'm Jennifer Carl Tong, and I write historical Christian romance.
And I also forgot I was the host for just one little moment.
I realized I didn't have you in the host seat either, so that didn't help you, but not like
Yeah,
last week. Last week you were supposed to be the host, and you convinced me it was me, and I didn't realize it till after I was already
well, I
reading
was
the intro.
convinced it was you. Okay, so we want to welcome all of our people who are in the chat, our people who are listening on all of the podcast platforms, wherever you might be, watching on YouTube, watching on Facebook. Oh, where are we? Are we on Twitter too? Streaming?
Yes, we actually are
So,
streaming on Twitter right now too. Yes,
yeah. So,
not sure why. We're just giving it a try.
well, well, if you're
Why
over
not?
on Twitter, make sure you like us or comment or say something so that we know. So we'll keep doing it on Twitter. But
Yeah.
we love you all, and we so appreciate you listening to us. And we hope that we offer you some value for your time.
This morning, we already have in our chat, Catherine Carroll is with us this morning. Good morning, Catherine. Purpose Behind the Pen is with us as well. Good morning. Barbara Fields is joining us on Facebook. Good morning, Barbara. And it's
Awesome.
you and me today.
Yeah. So we usually start our podcast with a segment called What's Up, where we say what's up in our personal lives and our careers and anything else. So what's up with you, Jen?
So I had a doctor's appointment this week. If you followed us for any length of time, you know that our writing group, which was the precursor of this podcast, started right after I had well, in the middle of my cancer treatment. Um, and since having my thyroid removed and having my radiation, and having that initial scan to see that I was cancer free, I haven't seen a cancer doctor at all. I've never had a doctor send me one. And I also had never seen an endocrinologist. Didn't even know that was a thing. That shows how ignorant I am about the medical field. It wasn't until my daughter, my 14-year-old, recently was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which is what I believe I had when I still had a thyroid that caused all my problems, and it was misdiagnosed for decades. Um, and she got sent to an endocrinologist, and I was like, "Why am I not going to an endocrinologist?" Hers was a pediatrician, a pediatric endo. So my new doctor sent me to an endocrinologist this week, and he decided to do a ultrasound. And it was a very long ultrasound, and they focused on one specific area, and then I had to wait a very long time for the doctor to come in. And when he came back in, he's like, "All right, we'll see you in 6 months." And I'm like, "What about the ultrasound?" And he's like, "Oh, no, it's fine. We're just gonna keep an eye on everything and keep an eye on, for cancer markers," whatever that means. So I'm telling you this whole thing for a couple reasons. First of all, like, you are your own best advocate. If I hadn't said, "I need to see these doctors and I wanna go deeper," I never would have even gotten this appointment, number 1. Number 2, the other thing I wanna talk about is that turned my world upside down the rest of the day. I because in that period of, "We're gonna do an ultrasound," all the way to the doctor finally telling me, "It's fine," um, my you know where my mind went? Like, it's back. Because your thyroid can grow back, and if it does, generally, it's a very bad thing that it grows back because it's usually the cancer that's growing it back. Um, but I started, like, thinking about everything, about my girls, and just everything about what will happen if this is back, and it's not, praise God, it's not. But all in all, I just really, I just really want you all, like, if you think, like, there's something wrong or you think that, like, your doctor's not giving you the right care, you're your best advocate. Like, I did a bunch of research, and I have been, like, listening to podcasts about thyroids, and I've been doing research, and I when I went into my new doctor, I felt like I had an arsenal of information that helped lead the discussion the way it should have been. I will also say though, this specialist, this endocrinologist, I don't like him, but there's only 2 in our area that are specialists. But I felt like he was just kind of blowing me off. I don't feel like I don't know why I even need to go back to this guy. So that's another thing to pray about is whether or not I keep going to him because he will keep an eye on it to make sure that like we'll keep doing ultrasounds and make sure that like we don't have any cancer markers. So that's a good thing. I guess I'm going for that reason. But yeah, so poor Tina had to deal with me afterwards
Yeah,
because
I could tell you were shaken when you called me.
my
You
gosh.
were.
I
I
don't think
used
I
to
could e
work for an endocrinologist out at Health Park called Dr. Jean Nelson, and I don't
mhm.
know if she still sees patients or not, but she was wonderful.
Well, I will check into her,
Because she's
honestly.
also like the head of like the medical school, the
Oh, yeah.
residency program. And so she had gone down to part-time office hours when I was working for her. So I had to
Mhm.
go find another job because I was a single mom at the time and I couldn't live on part-time, but she was wonderful. We had so much fun there at that office.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
yeah, awesome. So anyways, like I don't know why that's my what's up. I don't really have anything out of that other than I really think that if you aren't feeling well, you think that something is not right, like in your doctor. Cause like I had the same doctor for a long time and he kept ignoring the signs. He just kept doing like this one blood test and it kept coming back fine. And it wasn't until my neck started bulging. And at that point, it was too late because my thyroid had actually was my when my surgeon finally took it out, like he said that the one side was as big as his fist. Now he was not a little guy. He was a big dude and the other side was almost as big as his fist. And but it had gone around my in my up into my jaw, around my spinal cord, around my vocal cords. I can't sing anymore. My voice sounds different. Like I'm blessed that I can still talk. Like it was bad. Um and all the signs were there. So if you think something like do your own research and just be your best advocate is I guess what I'm saying. So
And a good doctor will actually be happy that you are your best advocate and that you come in prepared with the
mhm.
questions that you have for him or her.
And if they don't, if they give you a hard time like that other doctor I was telling you
Find a
about,
new doctor.
find a new doctor because he treated me like I was like he called me, "Oh, here's my Google patient," because I would do research online, and so if they act like that, get a new doctor. Yeah.
I actually worked with him when he
Yeah,
was a
you did.
resident, and
Mhm.
nobody liked him because he was not nice.
He's not nice. Yeah, I
So,
agree. Anyway, alright.
anyhow,
Tina, what's up
um,
with you?
well, we decided to do a thing and to restart our Patreon that we had going before and shut it down, and now it's open again. And when we announced it last week, I guess we weren't really clear that it wasn't supposed to start until March.
What? Right. Okay, so we thought, like, we'll talk about it, and then we'll really launch it in March, and people will start slowly kind of, like, you know, joining us and helping, yeah. But no, we
Yeah,
got immediately people started, which
we already
thank
have
you.
people signed up.
Thank you
And
so much,
so,
everyone.
yeah, we really appreciate you. So, because we didn't plan on doing anything in February, we felt really bad that people joined in February.
And
So
we're getting
we,
nothing for it.
yeah,
Like, we didn't have anything ready,
we
except for
just
the postcasts, if you did
right.
that level. Yeah.
Yeah, if you did the $10 level, the super shenanigans, I did put a couple postcasts up there. I'm gonna put another one today. And I started a Zoom room that I'm gonna put in there today. Um, but we decided that we are going to have a special thing on the 29th. That's the last day of the month at 7 p.m. And we're
Mhm.
calling it Shenanigans with the Ladies.
Yes. Because
So
what better day to have shenanigans than the one day that, like, just pops up
we're
every
not
4
it's not
years,
going to occur until 4 more years.
right?
Yeah. So if you sign up at the shenanigan level or higher, you will get to participate in our Shenanigans with the Ladies on the 29th at 7 p.m. Um, and otherwise, all of our regular things that we're going to do are going to start happening in March. So
Right.
and I
And
wish I had opened the calendar, but we have Q&A coming in the
oh,
the third week,
I
I
can tell
believe
you.
it is. Yeah, why
Yep,
don't you
so
pull that up?
I have it. So on the 29th of this month is the shenanigans with the ladies, and then be at least me and Tina. And then on the 18th is our first Q&A at 7 p.m. And then the first Bible study will be on the 28th with Tina. So and you all need to register for these so that we know who to expect to be coming. Obviously it's free if you're a member of our Patreon, if you're one of our patrons. But yeah, so those are the things we have coming up right now for those levels.
And I will send out the registration links and all that on the 1st
Mhm.
of March. I'll have that up by then.
Yeah,
And so that was really my what's up because I've been working hard trying to get all this stuff going and
right.
learn
And
how to do
Teresa
the posts and all that stuff.
Teresa says that the first week is free anyway. Yes, that is very true. But the problem is that after that, we still didn't have anything after that. It's like the first week is supposed to be for you to try it out and see if it's for you. There was nothing to try out. So that's why we felt really bad about it. So
Yeah,
we're gonna give you guys a special
right.
shenanigans. What does that mean? We're not 100% sure.
Yeah,
It'll
it's a free
be
for all. Just
it's
show
a
up.
free for all. Yeah. And if there's just a few of you, even more.
No,
It'll
yeah,
be even more personal. So
yeah, that'll be fun.
yeah,
Okay,
I'm looking
so
forward to it.
that is my what's up. Do we have any what's ups in the chat? Doesn't look like
Um,
it.
nope, not yet. If we miss your what's up and you want to go over to our Facebook group and throw it in there for everybody to encourage you and support you, that would be awesome too. And if you're not part of our Facebook group, the link is in the show notes.
Okay. Oh, Anna Estrada said, "I love the last Q&A. I listened to it 3 times."
Oh,
Thanks,
thank you,
Anna.
Anna. That's great. It was fun. I
And
like doing it. I
yeah,
look
I did
forward to
too.
doing it when we can actually like bring people on camera. And if you are camera shy, you can keep your camera off, but we can just have your voice. Excuse me, I'm about to.
Oh, that's catching. I was doing that earlier. Yeah, you can just have a picture or an avatar in your for your camera if you're camera shy. And if you don't want to get on the mic, you can put your questions if you have questions or you want to say something. There's going to be a chat. It's going to be
Mhm.
on Zoom. So if you're familiar with Zoom, you'll know how that goes.
Right. And for $5 a month to be able to access all this stuff, honestly, we've been doing this as a ministry, and this is for what, years now, 3, 4 years now, 4, 5 years now.
Mm.
And so, um, for $5, we're talking a Starbucks coffee a month. You get access to all this stuff and you get to support the things we're doing here because this is a ministry. We are not going to be taking profit from this ever. If we end up bringing in so much money that it's covering all of our expenses, then everything on top of that is going to be going back into improving the podcast.
Retreat, retreat, retreat.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's the goal, right? Is someday be
Yeah,
able to have a writing retreat. So
yeah.
appreciate everyone that's already done it. If you, I don't think I have, I will put it in the show notes. Um, if you would like to support us, the link will be in our show notes.
Right. And it's also in the newsletter that I send out this morning. So.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Okay. So are we ready to transition to our topic of the day, of the week?
Yes.
So the topic of the week is 5 mistakes, new writer mistakes that we made so you don't have to.
We narrowed it down to 5 because we made lots,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we had to be able to fit it into an episode. So we
Right.
had to kind of whittle it down, but
Plus, it's only
um
so much of our egos can take so much beating of like, oh yeah, I did that. Like, oh, I
well,
shouldn't have done that.
when you're brand new and of
Yeah.
course we didn't have this podcast when we were
Mm-hmm.
brand new to kind of guide us and help us along, and some of the podcasts that were out there had value in them, but some they had such potty mouths I couldn't listen to them. And
Same. And I had littles in the house at the time, so I
yeah,
couldn't for sure couldn't listen, so
and it was so distracting that it took away from the content
plus
for
the other
me.
podcasts, which I appreciate other podcasts. I still get information from other podcasts that are not Christian, but they don't have the community that we do. Doing this live and having other writers and authors in the chat offering their own advice and their own experiences is something that like you just can't find somewhere else. And we just appreciate you all that are part of this.
Because I know there's several people here that have way more books out than we
Oh yeah.
do. Some of them
Oh
have
yeah.
10, 15 more books. So,
Mhm.
like, if you have your own mistakes that you want to share in the chat, we would love to hear them.
Alright.
Okay, what do you want? You want to get started, Jen? What's the first thing on the list?
Um, so this is really your big one
Oh,
that
that's
you
right.
said first, though I do have comments about myself, but so we're gonna start with you, Tina. What is the first thing that you would not that you made
I
let me
would
start over. First mistake you made that you would not repeat?
I would not send my manuscript to the editor before it was ready.
Tell us your story, Tina.
I was so excited to get my manuscript finished.
To hit the end?
Yeah, I was so excited. I think the next day I went on Fiverr and found an editor and sent it to it.
Mhm.
Like no self-editing, no revision, self-revision, nothing.
And you
Just
didn't do a
raw.
whole lot to vet that editor either, because they did
No,
not.
it was,
Yeah.
yeah, and it was not helpful at all.
Mhm.
And of course, the manuscript she got was garbage.
Mhm.
So I
But then
think
she
that
told you it's great, and so you thought it was great because someone told you that you didn't know that it was great, and so then what did you do?
I think that I had Jamie look at it, and I think that I think that's the one I rewrote. Maybe not. I don't remember now. That was so long ago.
I remember you sent it to a bunch of people, including someone who was you sent it to me, to Jamie, to somebody, who's from Alaska that you didn't know her yet, but
Right.
you
That's
you
right.
sent it to many people. There was like a beta group of people,
Mhm.
and I think that it broke your heart with some of the response you started getting immediately.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Because my one friend, my best friend growing up, Chrissy Gain.
Mhm.
That's not her last name now, but I'm not gonna out her. She's married. She's married. Um, she lived 2 doors down. Uh, I asked her to if she wanted to read it, and she said, "Oh, and I have a bunch of friends."
Mhm. Oh, yeah. Yeah,
So
that
she sent it to a bunch of her friends. One of those friends is a English professor at the University of Washington in
Mhm.
Washington State, and I got like a 5-page typed synopsis, like professional like review of my manuscript.
Mhm.
And I'm pretty sure that's what made me start over.
Right.
And I
And
just
that is what
rewrote the whole book.
because I was going through and editing for you and making notes, and I was about 3 quarters of the way through, and you basically said, "I don't want it. I'm starting over." Like, I was like, "Oh, okay." Like, alright. But it was very heartbreaking for you, you know?
It
So
was, but I'm so glad that I did it because
mm,
the what I ended up with in the end was 100 times better
right,
than what it had to begin with.
right. So similar, not the same, but similar. I did edit my book a few times before I sent it. I shared it with an editor. It was somebody I was gonna be swapping editing with, and he um I think I probably should have spent more time editing because a lot of our he wanted to go chapter by chapter. He would read it and then we would do a telephone conference and go through the chapter together. And they were long conferences. And I think that if I had spent a little bit more time um, editing before I sent it to him, it would have been a less stressful kind of process. So we say we would not send our manuscripts to the editor before it's ready. Or would we? Was there an upside to that, Tina? For you, the fact that like you have a much better product because you did that. It was the wake up call maybe that you
Right.
needed to
And I
say?
think that I think we look at mistakes, this is a mindset thing. If we look at mistakes as, "Oh no, I messed up. I might as well
Mhm.
quit," or "There's something wrong with me," or "That's bad."
Mhm.
That's the wrong mindset. The mindset
Right.
is that every mistake you make is a opportunity to learn something.
Right.
And I think you'll always hear the cliche of like Einstein tried 1,000 times before he got the light bulb to work. So like, were those
Not
999 times?
you mean Edison.
Edison, Einstein. It starts with the same letter.
I love you, Tina. Same
Anyway,
same thing for me though, like, if I hadn't gone through that experience, I don't think I would be as meticulous of a self-editor as I am now. It's still not perfect, it still needs to be gone through by someone else, but it's a much better, um, piece of work that I give over to the editor than it would have been if I had not gone through that process, so
right. So yeah, it was a major learning curve for
mhm.
me, and this whole thing of, oh, I'm going to write a book and send it off and it's going to be done.
Mhm.
Well, no, that's not how
No.
it works.
It's not how it works. All right, for me, my first mistake that I can think of that I made that I would not repeat is I would not release my first book until the entire series was released. The stress and the strain, if you put out a book that people like, now there's this added pressure of everybody else, when's the next book coming out? When's the next book? Like, I can't even go to church without, hey, when's the next book coming out? Which I know that that's going to happen as an author, right? But as a new author who's still struggling to figure out her process, who's still trying to figure out every part of the business, it was a lot. So that's how I felt. But how do you feel about that, Tina?
Well, it's kind of a two sides of a coin because, yeah,
Mhm.
there's that pressure that
Mhm.
people now want the book too. Because I did put an epilogue. No, is it an epilogue? A prologue's in the beginning, epilogue's at the end.
Yes.
I did not sleep well last night, and my brain is
Aw.
punishing me for it. Um, that kind of ended on a cliffhanger because it was the beginning of the next story.
Right.
So now people are like, "Well, we want the next book,"
Right.
and so there was that pressure.
Mhm.
But I don't know if I would have kept writing if I didn't have that win in the win column
Right.
of I've published a book and people like it.
Mhm. So, I have to side with you on that too. So, I say I would not release my book until the entire series was released, or was finished, um, or would I? Because I think that there is a part of me too that needed that, not only needed that, like, yay, when you did it, but also I'm a better writer. And not just because I've also heard the theory, like, don't release your first 3 books ever, just use it to learn the craft of writing. Well, I don't think that's really true because if you don't learn your mistakes, and I learned the mistakes because they got edited and because people read them. Like, if I had not maybe released like I did, every one of my books would still have this one problem. There's one problem that showed up in my first book and I was able to correct it in the rest in that book, but then in the rest of them is I used to do the um she said, comma, and then it would be something else. Like, she said, um lifting the paper. He walked in the room, or I don't know. It was always like he said, comma, something else. Every single time I said he said or she said, there was a comma and something else was attached to it. And it was, now that I look back at like my original drafts, it's very cumbersome and I didn't notice it. But the editor caught it. And if I had not had that editor and I'd not gone through that process, every book would have had that problem because I didn't see the problem.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't release all the books or wouldn't release the first book, but maybe I would. So,
Maybe if you're a brand new author who's never released a book,
mhm,
it would be a good idea to just release that first book and have that win in your win column.
mhm.
And maybe the next series you wait till you have at least 3 books written
Yeah, that's my
before you
goal.
release it.
That's my goal, is I think that it might be a bit of time, but I don't think I'm gonna release until I have all the books of the series done. For myself and my own sanity too, but
Right. Catherine has a good comment.
okay,
She said, "When is the next book coming out? Questions will never stop,
that's
no matter
true.
how many books you have out, unless your books start to stink."
That's true. So I guess you take it as a compliment, right? And I do take it as a compliment. And it's never someone being a jerk. It's always someone who's just very excited and very sweet. So yeah, that's very true, Catherine. Um, Piper says there are a lot of people who won't really start a series until it's complete, won't release a series until it's completed. Yep, I get that. And Piper says, Jen, if you sent it to the editor while you were writing the rest, the editor still would have found it and you still could have fixed it and then released them out. Very true, but I wouldn't have had money to do all the, like, I had to release one book in order to keep funding what I'm doing, if that makes sense. Like, at some point it had to be at least starting to pay for itself. So otherwise it would have been, um, you know, it wouldn't have been worth it for me. So
Okay, so the next one I believe was mine. I would not do newsletter swaps and group promos to get
mm.
my newsletter list.
Interesting, because this is advice that we have given in the past,
Right.
right? So,
But live and
explain
learn
why. Okay.
because those people who signed up for my newsletter to get a free book are not my super fans. They are not maybe even my fans. They
Mhm.
just wanted a free book. And so my open rates, my click rates, the people interested in buying the next book, the percentage is not going to be as high because I have all of these cheap signups.
Mhm.
Instead of waiting for the slow organic signups of people who've actually read my book and are actually interested in me and my books and actually want to know when the next book's coming.
Right. And I would agree with this because I would say that my hottest readers, my biggest fans that are in my newsletter, gr my subscribers, they are the ones that found me organically through the book. However, and maybe this is a genre specific thing, um, I still have sales from people that I found through newsletter swaps and group promos. But I will say, because that's why I'm thinking this is possibly that this is genre specific, is I was very picky about the group promos that I was in and especially newsletter swaps because I wasn't as concerned about numbers because if they didn't write a book that was Christian and historical and romance, like if it didn't seem to be like an exact match, I didn't care how many numbers they had in there. You know, I might possibly do a swap with someone who was a contemporary Christian writer, but it had to be romance and it had to be Christian because the people that read sweet romance or clean romance, some of them will also read stuff that isn't Christian or don't want Christian. And so I was very picky about that. But still I agree. I do have a lot of freebie seekers on my in my newsletter group. So those ones like and I think eventually I can get those weeded out. But so would I still do the I don't know if I would to begin with. I don't know. Now I
Yeah.
don't. I
And
now I'm very picky about what I do with my newsletter
the
group.
genre specific thing for me is that when you go into these things, there are very, very few of Christian fantasy newsletter swaps.
Mhm.
So
That's
it's
exactly what
really,
Piper is saying.
really
Piper
hard
is
to be picky on what newsletter swaps you choose when
Mhm.
there's only two.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then
Mhm.
you look at the regular fantasy and
Mhm.
try those, but those readers aren't looking so much for Christian fantasy. And mine is loosely Christian fantasy. It's really more dystopian.
Mhm.
But that wasn't a category on Amazon, so I had to
Right.
pivot really quick, which is also a mistake that I made that you learn by your mistakes and make sure you know your genre clearly before you start writing.
Right.
That's
And
a
the
freebie for you.
freebie one. Yeah, and, Piper agrees. She says that she thinks that the newsletter promo thing depends a bit on genre. She thinks there may not be as many Christian readers of fantasy, so those newsletter subscribers would be very slow coming in organically. But again, maybe the slow is the better because honestly, if you're in a fantasy swap and everybody there is looking for dragon books, that's not your book, right? And so people aren't that's not your people, but your people are out there. It's just finding them, right?
Right.
So, okay.
Okay. What
Um,
you want to talk
we
about the next one?
Yes, and we both I think agree with this. If I were starting over today, I would not worry about building a platform, specifically social media, because back in the day, now if you guys ever binge us and you go back and listen, I am very much an advocate of starting a Facebook group, starting there first. I kind of gave you the whole lowdown in a couple of episodes early on of how I did it. And then I funneled those people into my newsletter. And that's how I started my newsletter. Um, but here's the problem is Facebook has changed the game many times in the past several years since I started my Facebook group. And now, like, almost nobody sees when I post in my Facebook group. I've pretty much abandoned it. And I kind of feel bad about it, but I kind of don't because they're not getting my posts anyway. Um, I think it's just really hit or miss how Facebook groups and so I would not and plus Facebook owns it. So putting energy into something that someone else owns
Right.
did not work. And I was when we first started the chant that you heard from everyone in the industry was build your platform, build your platform, build your platform.
Mhm.
Um and I think a lot of that chant was coming from people who wanted to be traditionally published. And at that point in our careers, the traditionally published, like the publishers were still fighting to hold on to their grasp of publishing, and indie publishers like us were kind of coming in and kind of doing our own thing. And so I think that they were like, we'll take you if you're popular enough is what they're looking for. And I don't think that again, I don't people aren't using social media to buy books. I'm
No.
sorry. There will be the outliers. There will be some people that do really well on Book Talk, and they will sell books that way for now until TikTok changes the game with the algorithms, right?
Right.
You don't own that. So I would not have worried about trying to build my I mean, like for example, I said this last week. I have like my biggest platform right now is always it's Twitter. I don't think I've ever made a sale on there. And like everyone is like either hot or cold about Twitter now. Like I get no traction on Twitter at all anymore.
I never
And
did.
and so, like, I have that big, platform there of nobody that's gonna read my books. So that for me, I would never. I would not
Right.
worry about that as a new writer.
And I just want to reiterate that she's talking about social media platforms
Yes.
because I actually went in and started doing a free David Gaughran course. Oh, and of course my brain's not going to remember the name of it. It's been in my head all week. But
Mhm.
it's free on his website and he considers your newsletter and to be part of your platform and your website.
Yes.
And in
Agreed.
his course, he says the two things you absolutely need are a simple website where you can send people for newsletter signups with a
Mhm.
newsletter sign up form and a newsletter in an email service provider. Those are the two things you got to have for a
Mhm.
platform. And then he says as an optional thing that he says is very helpful to have a Facebook page, not a group, just a static page for people that might be looking for you that has a link to your website where they can sign up for your newsletter.
I would agree with all of those things.
Yeah.
Like, if I had to close down social media, I would keep my Facebook page. I'd get rid of everything else. I have Instagram because I enjoy Instagram, not really to further my career. But I agree with all that. Newsletter still king, I believe. Website, you got to have a website. Can
Hmm.
be simple, but you got to have a website. Agreed.
Yeah.
Piper says, I have not been posting on my author page either. I don't see the return on investment of time. Agreed. If I feel like posting something, I post it. Like I just randomly will post some things, and it's mostly things that like I think are or I'm reposting from someone else or something that I think is like interesting about my genre, but it's not selling my books. Like I really don't sell over there at all.
Yeah.
That's the other thing too. I think social media, if you're going to do it, it just needs to be about showing you and authentically you, things you're interested in, things about your genre or the things that your readers might be interested in, and not for selling. Like have links to find like for them to find you elsewhere. So yeah.
Right. And I just before we go any further, I just want to stop and thank Anna. She said that this week she read and enjoyed my book, Lost in the Land of the Midnight Sun. So thank you for
Oh,
that. I always appreciate
yeah.
the feedback.
Piper says, so you've got to have a newsletter for people to sign up, but potentially, if you're keeping it organic signups, have a very small list. It's frustrating. I agree. But let's say, like, and I don't want to discourage you, Piper, but let's say you have 200 people on your list that instead of like 2,000, but the 2,000 list, you probably only have 200 people that are actively wanting to buy your books anyway, and you're paying for the when you get over that amount. So
Yeah.
and again, everybody's different. These are just our mistakes. So you may have found someone listening to this can be like, this is a bunch of bunk because I did it all this way and I'm making great money. Awesome. Please come to the Facebook group and share that because this is just our experience that we're sharing.
Right.
So
And everybody started with a small list, no matter how
mhm,
big their list is now.
true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Just takes time.
Yep. Purpose
Okay.
behind the pen says she's at the point where I don't want to use Facebook. I'm same sister. Facebook barely shows your author page. This is what Catherine says. If you're not paying to boost it anyway, for sure. Liz Henderson says 200 people on a list seems like a lot to me. It will at first. Yeah, for me too. I was so excited when I got my first 100. I was like, 100 people want to hear from me. Yeah, I agree. So, all
Yeah.
right. And Purpose Behind the Pen says, Catherine, I have to agree. If you're not willing to pay, no boost. Agreed. because you don't own Facebook. You own
Mhm.
your newsletter list. So
Right.
that's a future episode. We're going to go more into depth
And
on
so there's
newsletters.
that link in the back of your book of join my newsletter or the front of your book or both,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you decide to do. Make
Mm-hmm.
sure that it's attractive, make sure that it's well done, and make sure that the sign up sheet you pop up you send them to looks nice. Like just make sure it's like a great experience for your reader, and those organic signups will be easier. I'm not saying it's easy, I'm saying it
Mm-hmm.
easier to get.
Agreed.
So the number five, I would not worry about paying for advertising when I only had one book out.
That's the fifth one.
hmm
So tell us your experience, Tina.
Well, I would pay for advertising, whether it was like a fussy librarian thing or
Mm-hmm.
whether it was on Facebook ads or whether it was Amazon ads. And I would get a small spike.
Mm-hmm.
But when I wasn't paying, that would go back down to almost nothing.
Right.
And so, and I wasn't making enough money off of those sales to pay for the advertising.
Oh,
So I was basically paying for it out of my other job that I have, which is fine.
right.
It was a learning experience and I appreciated the learning. But I'm just not going to worry about it. I did do a fussy librarian last month only
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted that spike. I knew it was going to have like a big spike and then nothing because
Mm-hmm.
I gave away like 1,500 free copies of my first book,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm making sales now on book two.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have like over, I don't know how many thousand page reads I've had now
Mm-hmm.
on book two. Be after that, so I'm kind of getting ready for the launch of book three, and so that's kind of my strategy. Like get people to read book one and two,
Mm-hmm.
so there's more people that have read them when I release book three.
Right. That's a good idea. Okay, so for me, I I have found I have profitable experiences with things like Fussy Librarian and like that when it's a new release. So if I use them at release time, I will make more money than what I spend out for sure because I do best on when it's a new release. But I found that if my book appears on any of those platforms, even one time, I don't do well. Even if I wait a year or two, it doesn't do well for me a second time, or at least not as well. So I think it's best for new releases. But for me, Catherine says she was told not to market until there were 3 to 5 books. Best advice she ever followed. So that's the advice I followed too. I waited till I had 3 books out before I went to advertising. There's a difference between promo sites and advertising. I feel like the promo sites have been fine for me when I have new releases, but I started doing advertising and it sucked the soul from me. I I spent so much time trying to learn it. I'm talking Amazon advertising specifically. And I really feel like it was like sending me into a spiral. Eventually, I said, I think I need to walk away from this. And I think it was Tina that said, I think you need to walk away from it. Like, I think you pointed out to me, you're like, I don't think this is good for you right now. And I was like, I was going through a whole lot too with losing my mom and then my brother, like a lot of stuff. But it I think that I need to step away from advertising because I wasn't ready. I'm still producing my product. You don't try to open the doors and sell, have a sale on donuts when your new donut shop if you only made 3 donuts, right? I feel like I need to
Yeah,
have a lot more out there for myself personally. Again, other people sell one book, go into advertising, and they do great. But my mistake was it was too soon for me. So, I wouldn't worry about advertising yet. If you really want to, like that's just your personality, I think maybe look at Facebook advertising to grow your list. That's another way that you can grow your list that isn't doing newsletter swaps is to try to feed. Now, again, this is money you're putting out that you're not going to get a direct return on.
right.
So make sure you understand that like you're gonna be putting money out, but you're gonna be growing your list. If you do, I think Facebook is the best for that, for getting people to like, here's, my newsletter sign up and maybe new releases, it might help, but first in series and on Facebook is what I think is your best bet for that. But
hmm
Piper says, Jen, I remember you had said you were doing an experiment on advertising and we did not get the result. I've largely stopped advertising because of the size of the genre I'm in. Yeah, I still will share the result, but I think I need some more time to I know that was like over a year ago that I shared that because I was excited. But I'm going to backtrack what I had done. I'm going to kind of correct some of the things advice I had taken from a particular guru in advertising, and I'm going to go back to what I was doing and let that happen for a while as I release book 4, and then we'll see. So, yep.
And Piper and I are in the same genre, so I feel your pain, Piper.
Mhm.
Which is why I'm writing a murder mystery. Like maybe my murder mysteries will sell and can prop up my fantasy Kristen fantasy books.
Yeah,
Who
maybe.
knows? Maybe there'll be people like me who like different genres. I
Right.
like to read fantasy and crime murder
And
mysteries.
you were just so much happier. I know you love your other series. We all love it, but I feel like you're just so much this is so weird though. So much happier writing murder
A good
mystery.
murder
A
makes
good
me
murder.
happy. And
It does seem that.
I was at a dinner the other night with my daughter's friends. One of her friends couldn't come. Her dad got sick and she had to leave the state. And she was going to
Mhm.
go. It was a Valentine's thing. She was going to go
Mm.
by herself. My daughter's like, "There's this ticket, Mom. You want to come?" So like her one friend is all about the true crime TV shows and how it relaxes her.
Mhm. That's funny.
Like, and all her friends are like, "Yeah, I love those. They're so relaxing." And I was like, "You are my people."
Yep. Piper agrees too. She says, "Yep, cozy mystery coming up." So,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
All right. Well, I think that's it for our 5 mistakes we made. Um, yes, Liz, we're saying your Christian fantasy not selling is not your fault. It's a very small genre, a very niche. Matter of fact, if you do a fussy librarian, you'll probably get to number one that day in the category because I think you only need to sell 20 books to get to number one. The last time I checked Publisher Rocket, which was like a year ago. But anyway. So that's our mistakes that we would make. If we do this in a year, we'll probably have more. Do it again in a year.
Oh, I'm sure we could probably do it next month, and I'd have 5 more.
I'm sure. I'm sure. I think Sonia has a comment. Do you want to share that one? A cozy mystery group launched an online store. It's a good idea, but how expensive is it to maintain and do the sales pay the bills? I hope it does well.
So they launched their own online store. Don't do that. If you're gonna do that and go to all that hassle, do your own online store on your own website.
And make sure you
Like
have a backlog, like a backlog. Is that's not the right word? Is
mhm.
it is like a bunch of
Yeah,
books?
yeah. I mean, I think it's possible you can make money. I mean, I've not looked at this, so this is just me, like, spouting off, to be honest. But this is, once again, me putting my product in someone else's hands for them to be responsible for and sell, and no one is going to love your product as much as you do. So, I mean, possibly, like, they're gonna be probably advertising to the specific readers of your genre, so maybe it'd be worth taking a look, but, I mean, if you're gonna go to the work of leaving or not being tied to, like, the big, 3, like Amazon and Barnes& and Noble, Kobo, like, Apple. If you're gonna do that, you might as well do it on your own website. And, there are tutorials out there on how to do it. Anymore, the plugins for your website to do it yourself are, like, making it so easy.
And
So,
so many people
not
are doing Shopify.
yeah, there's so many different ways of doing it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, backlist. You said backlog. So they said
Yeah,
they're
I knew
correcting
that
you.
was wrong, but
Yeah.
all right,
And I'm
let's
clearly not able to correct you, so
I did not sleep. I woke up at 3. Okay,
aw,
it's time for the feeding of the backs.
yes, it
This is
is.
where we have had been given a sprint prompt, a sprompt, as I was about to call it. And we both get the same prompt and we have 15 minutes to write. We do it just before the podcast starts. There's no time to plan, there's no time to edit or revise. And so we only give positive feedback because these have not been polished. And we are going to share them with you live as we always do. And so go ahead, Jen, tell us what the words are and what you wrote.
All right, the words are rotate, plane, multiply, false, and discrimination. And I am more nervous about sharing this piece of writing than I have any of the previous 240 some pieces of writing that I have shared live on the podcast. Because so book 2 of my new series that I am working on already. Book 2 deals with it's set post Civil War, but it deals with discrimination and you know ex-slaves and racism and it needs to be handled very properly. First of all, it needs to be sensitively dealt with, but I also feel like it needs to be accurate. Um, for example, when I was still teaching high school English, when I would teach Huck Finn, the first day of the lesson, I would write the word Negro on the board, and half of my class would freak out that I put that word on, what do you they would get mad because I taught at a multicultural school. And then we would go through and discuss the word Negro and that is it okay? Like, is it a cultural thing? Like to us, it's a racist word to use now, but has it always been? And then I would share with them the NAACP, what does it stand for? And then I'd have them research and figure out that the first word was Negro and it was started, it wasn't started by whites. And anyway, all that to say that that needs to be dealt with sensitively. I'm not saying that Negro is a proper word to use, but it would have been the word used back then. I did not use it in my writing today, but I wanted to. And it was very, I feel like, I feel like sharing this. I'm nervous because I haven't had time to pray about this or to edit this, and it's just raw. So as I read this, please understand my heart, and that if I say anything that you felt was offensive, please reach out to me personally because that's not my intent. And this may never, if I was just writing this may never have seen the light of day to anyone else to read. But here I am sharing it raw and live. So please understand that. So
Hmm.
here we go. Charlotte watched Shane rotate the log he was working on, flipping the freshly planed side face down. The summer sun was relentless that morning, but that didn't seem to impede the man's progress, except for the occasional pause to swipe a handkerchief across his brow. He worked relentlessly, completely focused on smoothing the piece of wood as if he took great pride in the project, and his determination made her wonder what exactly he planned to use the wood for. All while she was growing up, Charlotte's father had always complained about the laziness of his slaves, but Charlotte had never witnessed it herself. In fact, every time she had come in contact with any of the field slaves, they appeared to be just the opposite. They, just like Shane, had been the hardest working people she'd ever seen, far more so than her father had ever been, certainly. His skewed perspective was certainly a symptom of his discrimination toward the slaves, a perspective that had been proven false time and time again. Shane continued to glide the plane across the wood methodically, glide and lift, stopping occasionally to dust off shavings and dust created by the planer. Charlotte wondered what it would be like to have been raised like Shane, part of the household but not accepted as part of the family. Charlotte had been the exact opposite, part of the family but never feeling quite accepted. 3, 2, 1.
Wow. I don't like, okay. I probably can't speak to the sensitive part because I'm not a minority, but I
Mhm.
do have a child who is.
Mhm.
And I wasn't offended on his behalf. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Like,
Yeah.
hmm. But I really loved this scene. I loved the like insinuation that her father was lazy
Mhm.
and that he accused the slaves of being lazy, but he was the one who never worked. Like they were the
Mhm.
ones doing all the work. I love
Mhm.
that like observation, and I love the description of him planing the board. Like I took wood shop in high school.
Mhm.
I know I'm weird.
That's where all the cute guys were, right?
That's not why I took it.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I took it because my dad had bought me a jigsaw, and we used to go do like wood projects in the
Mm.
garage, and I was just interested in it. But yeah, I was one of the few girls. But I would love that the feeling of planing wood and the shavings, like there's something therapeutic about it, and the
Mhm.
smell of the fresh wood as it's cut, like I got that whole experience came back to me when you were describing the
Oh, good.
slide and lift, slide. Like I love that part.
Thanks. I think I probably will never use this, though it was 3 paragraphs, it needs to be 3 pages. I feel like I was trying to cram too much stuff in because I didn't want it to like, I if I started expounding on certain parts of, like, her past, and then it ended in the 15 minutes, then it could have been sounding very insensitive. I would think I was so worried about it sounding insensitive that I was trying to get to the point, like, I was trying to cram too much in. So,
Mhm.
the only thing I like from this, honestly, is like what you said, is the planing. And I kind of maybe even foreshadow like, or use it to, like, as Charlotte is feeling like, because parts of her personality, parts of, like, her perceptions of life need to start being, like, planed away, um,
Oh, I
throughout this
love that.
story. And I never would have thought to use, so here's what is golden about sprints. I'm probably not gonna use hardly any of this, but I might use the planing analogy. I might have that somewhere, have use that part because I do know my story and I do know my characters already. And she is going to start one way and then has her character art, a lot of like historically what she's been taught, how she's been raised, the misconceptions she's had from her own life experiences, not just about like the blacks that are around her, but also the just God and her life in general, because she has a lot of baggage. And so I think that that's what's good about Sprint. Sometimes you don't know what you're gonna get out of it, and all I'm gonna get out of it and take from this, I think, is the planing. So, and I'm okay with that. So,
Awesome.
you
You have
know,
quite a few comments.
okay, we'll go to
Piper
Catherine
says,
first.
"I'm with
Oh,
Tina."
whoops, hold on.
I'm sorry.
Let's
I didn't
so this
see Catherine. It
okay.
had scrolled. The thing had scrolled down past her.
Oh,
That
sorry.
was fantastic, Jen. I don't think there was anything in there that would be offensive.
Thanks.
Piper Dow, I'm with Tina. I did not find it offensive. You are not glorifying slavery. In fact, are demonstrating that the woman sees the disparity of the life. Purpose behind the pen says it wasn't offensive. Great writing piece.
Thanks.
Teresa Thomas, I think it was really well done, Jen, and that your heart came through clearly. And then
Thanks.
Piper said, also, it was a romantic view of the hard work of the labor he is doing. I love power tools.
Right. Well, it's not
And you-
power tool, it's the hand one. It's like
yeah.
the
I don't think there was
but
any
yeah,
power back then, but yeah, I like power tools too.
it was this power.
Hmm.
Alright.
And the sweat on, never mind. I'm not going to go there. I was
Well,
going to
thank
say
you.
the sweat on the muscles.
Thank you, everyone. Part of me kinda wishes I'd been a little more offensive. I know you guys love me, and I know that you guys understand my heart. So part of me is kinda like, I wish I could have, like, gone there maybe and seen where I could've not to be like, because I want you guys to know she's not perfect. Like, she's gonna be offensive in the beginning of the story.
Hmm.
You're not gonna like her until you see her hurt. Do you know what I mean? And start
Yeah.
to understand her. But I was afraid to share that raw and not edit it because I don't know how I'm gonna be writing that. So
Yeah. And I know a lot of people nowadays get sensitivity readers that they have
yeah,
read it first before they put it out there,
I'm gonna have to do that, I
which
think, in
I'm
this
probably
book.
going to have to do if I use the thing that I wrote.
Oh, okay. That's a great transition.
Yeah, and, I was awake at 3 o'clock in the morning because this scene was in my head, and I couldn't stop thinking about it, and it
Ah.
just so happened to go with the word discrimination, although I don't
Mhm.
actually use the word in the writing. So,
So, you were inspired by today's words as opposed to using them. I
yeah,
use 4
maybe
of the
my
5, just bragging.
subconsciously, I saw the words when I put them in the
Mm,
outline, and maybe my mind
probably.
went there, but it's something I've been thinking about. How in the world can I possibly write crime murder mysteries in the town of Anchorage, Alaska, and not talk about this?
Mm,
And I want to do it in my book. I want it in my books, but I feel like I need to talk to somebody from that community so that I can get a real understanding, because I don't want to
mhm,
be offensive like you said, and I want to give it the respect and the dignity and the honor that it deserves.
mhm.
So that's my disclaimer.
Okay.
The snow crunched between. Okay, I'm starting over. The snow crunched beneath Detective Robert Reed's boots as he made his way back to his car. Russian Jack Park meant to be an oasis in the midst of the sprawling city of Anchorage, Alaska, was currently the location of a crime scene. Floodlights lit up the bare trees, giving the path an eerie feel. As he approached the parking lot, he saw Detective Tilton speaking to a handful of ladies standing at the edge of the crime scene tape. They wore traditional native clothing and had a black handprint painted across their mouths. Detective Tilton had her arm around one of them, whose head rested on her shoulder. Must be the girl's mother. Detective Clifton came around the front of her SUV. Different detective. Their last names are too similar.
Mm,
Sorry, I had to say that because I don't want
mm,
you to think this is the same detective. She was the head of the missing persons department and someone Detective Reed often worked closely with, as her cases often became his. Reed had the thought that if this were a superhero movie, Detective Clifton's eyes would be glowing red and shooting fireballs.
mm,
2 hours. Her voice shook as she half shouted the words. I missed her by 2 hours. By the time I got the message and got to the homeless shelter, she'd already left. As Detective Clifton got closer, the moisture behind her eyes became more apparent. Her hands were balled into fists, her jaws clenched. How long has she been here? Please tell me not a week. Please tell me she wasn't
mm.
killed the day I almost found her. We won't know until the PM report. It's been below zero all week, Detective Reed said, grabbing hold of her arm when she turned to head into the woods. Don't, he said. You don't want to see her that way. Detective Clifton turned back, leaning against the side of her SUV with her palms kicking at the tires. Reed could hear tears in her voice as she shouted unintelligible words at the sky. Then she turned and came straight for Detective Reed. He almost backed away from her aggressive approach, but he knew this girl, so he held his ground. I've had enough of these. She paused. She knew it was to choose a nicer word than the one she wanted. Scumbags. Think women are beneath them, treat them like garbage. But if a woman happens to have this skin, she slapped her own cheek. This hair, she pulled her straight black hair, and these eyes, she pointed with both fingers, then they're less than garbage and they keep raping us and killing us, and nobody seems to be able or interested enough to do anything about it. Three,
Well
two,
done,
one.
Tina. Well done. Okay, here's my favorite part of this is that when you introduce the detective who's the female detective that was just yelling at the end?
Clifton.
Clifton. Um, she has her arm around one of the
No, that's a different detective.
Oh,
That's why
okay.
I said there's Tilton and there's Clifton, and their names are too close together. I need to change
Is
one.
is Tilton also excuse me, is Tilton also native?
I think she might be, but I haven't decided yet.
Okay, because with the arms around the Native American, it made me think that immediately she was, and I did get the characters confused. So my feedback will be a little different. But the fact that then you brought it together, so like as a reader, I'm reading it and I'm like, is she? And then I keep reading, and then you confirm it, and so that's what I love is that without saying at the beginning, uh, Tilton had her arm around her. Tilton also being of the same tribe. You know what I mean? You didn't tell us, you showed
Mhm,
us throughout. So anyway, and Clifton the same thing. Like you showed us that she was without saying, Clifton, who also was from the same tribe and understood these people. You know what I'm saying? So
mhm.
I love that. Very well done.
Thanks.
So yeah. Um, the chat agrees. Purpose behind the pen says, well done, Tina. Barbara Fields says, nice ladies, both pieces. Catherine Carroll says, great way to describe the last detective's appearance. Yeah, I love that very much. So,
Thanks.
and we have a new chatter. Charles A. Rhoda says, thank you. I'm a Christian writer too. I'm working, so won't be able to stay on. Well, Charles, congratulations. You're our very first chatter to comment from Twitter. We just said at the beginning of the hour that we've been streaming to Twitter, but we don't know if anyone is listening over there. So make a comment. And you're the first one. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, that's exciting.
You don't win anything, but congratulations.
Isn't our appreciation enough?
Yes.
Kidding.
Teresa says, wow, so intense. Love the lines at the end revealing her identity. I agree. Love that very much. Well done, Tina.
There was a lot more that came into my head at 3 in the morning, but I ran out of
Mm,
time.
right. So when we get done, you're probably gonna start writing. So
Yeah, if I
mhm,
have time, because I got people coming
right.
over. Okay, so now we're going to transition again into our what's next segment of the podcast. So, Jennifer, what's next with you?
I'm ready to start working on book cover. I already did kind of like the front cover of the book cover, but now I can do the wraparound. And so that is my plan for this week is Photoshop. Knee
Awesome.
deep in Photoshop. Yep. What
Fun.
about
And
you,
I know
Tina?
you
What's
love that stuff.
I do. I just need it just takes it just absorbs all my time when I do it. Like I will
Mhm.
spend 2 days straight doing it. Everyone else like, "Oh, go cook dinner, girls." And, "Oh, what's happened upstairs? Okay, great." And I'll just be down here in my office working. So,
Yeah.
what's next for you, Tina?
Well, and for my what's next, I want to talk about the epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women in the United
Mm,
States. Now, I can't speak for other countries. Piper just said that it reminds her of series that she just watched set in Canada that has Native characters, and she said very well done. But there was a show recently, um, a TV series called Anchorage Daily, I think, based on a reporter, and it's based on actual reporters who wrote a series in the Anchorage Daily News that it's called Anchorage Times. I'm sorry, that's the name of the show. The Anchorage Daily News. They won a Pulitzer Prize
mm,
for this series of articles bringing attention to the epidemic in Alaska specifically of missing and murdered Indigenous women. And not only is the missing rate and the murder rate horrifically high, also the rape,
mm,
because the villages. One story I read from that series was about a mom whose daughter, somebody broke into the window of her house and raped her daughter. They live in a village out
mm.
in the where there's no roads to get there. And the only police officer in town is a grandmother who doesn't carry a weapon.
Oh my word.
And the closest state trooper is a 30-minute plane ride away. There's no hospital to go take her to get a rape kit. And
Mm,
these things happen at epidemic levels, and there's just nothing that they could do about it because of the shortage of police officers in those villages. And um, some of the police officers that they did hire have criminal records. They
mhm.
found out.
Oh my
Um,
word.
right. So I want to call attention. I want to be a voice to call attention to this because, like, if you go to their website, it's mmiwusa.org, and we'll put it in the show notes. That's the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women of the United States of America, basically, is what that stands for. And they do like put black handprints over their mouths.
Mm,
Um, and I want to be able to bring attention to this in my books, and that's really where this came from. And so I'm using this podcast as a platform
mhm,
to bring attention to this is an epidemic that people need to care about, and it happens in the lower 48 too. Sorry, that's an Alaskan term for the rest of y'all. Alaska's the 49th state, and then you got Hawaii, who's like out there in the Pacific somewhere.
mhm,
um, they're the Native Americans that live in the lower 48 also have the same issues, a little bit different because they don't live in these remote villages with no access.
mhm.
And I know that it's in Canada too. So that's my what's next. That's what I wanted to talk about.
Catherine says, "Horrifying. I'm praying your books will shine light on this awfulness." I agree. All right, Teresa shared her what's next. She said that writing every morning with Tina and decided to work on the novel I was rewriting in 2022, and that decision feels monumental. I know what you're going through, Teresa. We both lost our moms, and it turns your world upside down, and it affects your creativeness, and I totally get it. She said just days before, she said she wasn't ready, and then it just felt right. So I'm excited and a little nervous. I'm so happy to hear that for you. I'm so happy. So that's exciting. If you would like to share your what's next with us, please head on over to our Facebook group and plop it in a post there. We'd all love to read it and to encourage you and to hear what's going on with your writer's journey. So,
Piper shared a what's next. She said,
oh,
working on my cozy mystery. And I got 500 words done yesterday, and that felt monumental.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's so great.
So much fun. I feel like Piper
Mhm.
and I are twins. Although she's running cozy, and there's nothing cozy about mine.
Mhm.
And Barbara said, I got a new job. I have a new job and have found can write more and meet goals. So awesome.
Exciting.
Awesome. Okay. Well, then that is it for us today. And that concludes this episode of the Christian Indie Writers Podcast. We're supposed to mention the Patreon. Go down in
Yeah.
the show notes, check it out, see what we got, see if it's of value to you, and sign up.
Alright.
All right. So until next time, may your pen be prolific, your deadlines be met, and may all of your words honor Christ. Bye
Bye,
now.
everyone.